Hi, I'm Ali and a warm welcome to the Ceramic Repair Studio. So in today's video, I thought I would continue with this little lid here from this Chinese, if you can see here, Chinese teapot here. And the lid has been previously broken and I've managed to fix it by applying some Milliput in my previous video, which because it had a large missing piece. So that's filled in, the Milliput's dried, and it's now ready for sanding. Now I do tend to use a sandpaper called wet and dry sandpaper, and you can see here Matador, and I tend to buy them in sheets where you have lots of different grades, and they start off with a very high grade, well, sort of a high grade of density. And now I tend to start with a sandpaper which is quite rough, and they do go in grades, and I tend to start, and I buy them in packs where you have the various grades in one pack. Now I do like to start off with a grade which is quite low, so we've got a bit more resistance against the Milliput here, and then I start to work down the grades so it starts to get lighter and finer. And in the end, I like to finish off with a 12,000 micro mesh, which is almost a material, but it almost ends up making the Milliput like a glass, if you like. So very, very fine. And then it's ready for painting. Now the sandpaper I use is Matador, and if you can see here, it's waterproof, and at the back they always tell you which grade, for instance, it is. Here is a 1200. So first of all, I like to start with a higher grade. So I'm just going to take one from the top. This is a 120, just to get it going. And I just take a little bit off. I don't use the whole amount, just take a little bit off. Take our piece, and you want to start sanding. Now, when I do start to sand, I don't like to touch anything original. So to begin with, we're just sanding and getting rid of the surplus majority of the Milliput. And this can take a little while. If you can actually have something, a sheet or some kitchen roll down, just to protect whatever you're on. And to begin with, I do go up and down, but as I start to get closer to the original, I then start to go literally from the original against the Milliput. Otherwise, you do end up with an edge. So, but for the moment, we're still taking off majority. And I'll keep doing this. Obviously, the more Milliputs you've put on, the longer a time it's going to take to actually sand down. So if you've been quite clever and haven't applied too much product, it should be quicker and easier to do. And you want to get it into that shape. And then obviously you can see the back here as well. So we'll sand the back. And I'm applying a little bit of pressure. And just keep sanding. If you have an item where it's a funny angle, you can always wrap up a tiny piece of your paper, for instance, with either something such as a pen or a cocktail stick, and you can wrap it round and then start to sand. Obviously this is fairly flat, so I can just use my hands or placing it like so on a flat surface. Now once you've started to get going, you can really then see, and you can feel it's getting towards almost the end now. I'm almost getting to a flush state. So I'm then going to start using slightly lighter sandpapers. So then again, just take one piece off, and then I like to, at this point, to go from the original towards the Milliput. If we go the other way, you'll end up with a ridge, and then you're going to have to refill in and start again. So we just very lightly want to start sanding, but when it comes to the edge, we want to be very careful. We don't want to sand the original, but you just should be able to feel a bite, and you can just keep sanding that along. And so just keep sanding away. So I like to almost get a little piece and then just really be in control with the sandpaper. And you should start smoothing out at this point, the lighter the sandpaper. And on the other side. Here's my other fingers here. So again, just working again from the original towards the Milliput, but not pressing too much on the original, but it's just helping it so it blends in nicely. And on the edge, again, very lightly. Also on the underneath side as well. So again, working towards the Milliput. And then on the other side, I just say, and you shouldn't be able to see the ridge. And then once you're quite happy with that, we can then go down to another level of sandpaper. Obviously, it depends on your item. I do find that pottery is more forgiving than, say, a porcelain, for instance, which is very fine and delicate. Grade of sandpaper. Again, I'm just taking it off, and you can see we're kind of reaching towards the end now. And again, from the original towards the Milliput, you just want to lightly sand. By this point, it should start feeling really soft. And this also takes out any little scrape marks as well. So if you've got a couple of marks, it will just take it out, and it makes it almost like glass and starts to polish it up quite nicely. So when the paint goes on, there shouldn't be any sort of gaps or any ridges. Again, pushing it forward. Try not to touch too much of the original. You don't want to scrape any off, and particularly if you do have any gilding, you want to be extremely careful not to go anywhere near any gilding. And then just on the underside here. Just keep doing that there. Now when it comes to the end, I like to then use a 1200, which I have here. You can see, I think this is a 1200 here. And so again, we just take this little piece off, and then again heading towards the Milliput. And you should be able to know when it's ready and you've had a really good sand, because what you can do is actually close your eyes, and then just with your finger just feel if there's any ridges, and if there's any ridges, you know you need to still do a bit more sanding, but it should feel nice and flush by this point. So again, I like to fold mine sandpaper over, and then on the other side. And then to finish off, I like to use my sandpaper, which is the micro mesh. And here we have the micro mesh. And then I like to just very lightly go across with it. And this will actually make it quite shiny as well. It's not necessary, but I really do like finishing off with the micro mesh, as I say, and it should feel really nice and smooth. Now it's quite interesting with this little teapot lid here, because I just want to sort of demonstrate and actually, well, just show you the difference in colour. So this is both Milliput. This is from a previous break, and this is the Milliput Superfine White, And this Milliput, I think it's silver grey. This obviously stands out more, but this colour, the silver grey, does work very well if you have Chinese, because obviously Chinese base tends to be more of a grey hue anyway. But obviously, if it's going to be painted, it's not going to make too much of a difference. But if you're just leaving it as a museum piece, perhaps you'd like to go more for a different colour tone. So I'm just going to keep working away with this, and then we'll be ready for painting. So I hope you enjoyed the video today and found it useful. Please consider subscribing and look at the rest of my playlists if you like, where I have plenty of other videos on ceramic repair and restoration. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Okay, bye.